Welcome back to the Mortgage Brew. Thank you for joining us today. We're super excited about the episode that we've got. We've got Josh here on my left. He is a realtor in the Pocatello area. He's the face that you get to see at the beginning of the transaction, the beautiful face of Josh. And then myself, I'm a mortgage loan officer here in our area. I do the nerd work. I kind of give you the financial side of it. I'll let you know what's going to work, what you'll be approved for, and learn a lot about you. And then we got the beautiful Miss Amber. She is on the closing side or the escrow side. So she's the fun face. She's the face you get to see at the end of the transaction. She gets to celebrate the day of closing. So, but the concentration for today is not the faces that you see. It's the transaction part, or the part of the transactions that you don't see as a buyer, the parts that Josh, myself, and my team, and Amber and her team do behind the scenes so that that transaction can be smooth and get to the closing table so that you can sign without any flaws in that process. So there's a lot that goes on. There's a lot that you guys don't see as buyers. And there's a lot, honestly, the fires that we kind of put out along the way that keep it so that you're not stressing, because this is a fun, or should be a fun transaction, and should be something that, it was, like you said before, Josh, when we talked earlier, it's one of the largest transactions that you're going to do financially.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of stress that comes with that just in general. So doing what we can do, doing what our coworkers and honestly the biggest support group that we have does behind the scene to make sure that that transaction happens is great. And I want you guys to know about it. So thank you for tuning in. So as always, coffee is my fuel. Coffee is what gets me going in the morning. Coffee is what makes me be a better mortgage loan officer. So today I went to Glean Coffee. It's a local coffee shop here in town. Great coffee shop. We had a conversation earlier before this, and I kind of told him this, like, I'm not loyal to any specific coffee shop as long as it's not a chain coffee shop. Like, I like my local shops. We've got a ton of them here, and I love that
different
about
local shops for a different mood. Man.
Different, yep. But the one thing I love about Glean Coffee is they contribute back to the community. So they do a lot of it's a portion of every cup that they sell. They do some kind of monthly fundraiser, monthly contribution to the community and servicing our community. So I love that part about them. They have great coffee as well. They kind of, I think they do their own beans. They sell their own beans too. So yeah, it's a great place to go. So if you're ever in downtown Pocatello on Main Street, swing by Glean Coffee and get you a cup of coffee. So Mr. Josh here went with the old faithful Flying S coffee, which is where we are today.
Drip coffee.
Drip coffee.
Company. It's classic.
Just keeps it simple. And then Amber's already, drank her whole cup, and she's good. She's
one cup of coffee
she's
a
energized. Day. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, people gradually get better and get more coffee in them as the day goes on. No, but so we also talked about what was in my coffee. I went with the full octane, and I call it a black eye. I don't know what everybody else calls it, but it's drip coffee with a couple shots of espresso.
Sounds like some kind of jet fuel.
I mean, I'm likely to climb a wall if need be. So I mean, it does what it does what it needs to do. And then Mr. Josh went black. How do you like your coffee, Amber?
Black with a tiny bit of creamer.
Just a touch.
Okay.
Just to change the color? Or?
Just to change the color, yep.
I like it. My wife, she's recently got onto the coffee train, but she started with like half coffee, half creamer.
Okay.
Initially.
Sounds like my wife, man.
I mean, it will sucker punch you. It's just so sweet. It keeps you going. But no,
it makes it really cold.
Yeah. But now in the summertime, I like cold coffee. Like I am one of those people that I will transition with the weather. I like warm coffee or hot coffee in the morning. My first cup, I like it hot. But if I get coffee throughout the day, I want it cold.
Okay.
Good cold brew in the summer too, man.
Gosh, dude. Do you make your own?
No, I need to.
It's not hard. It really isn't. You just got to have that press, I think, so that you keep the grains out of what you're drinking. But no, it's really good. Well, no, look, so guys, I'm super excited about this conversation. I really want to tackle it. But first I want to get in, or I know you guys, but I want everybody else to get to know you a little bit. So Amber, let's start with you. What got you into the real estate world, and what do you love about it?
Well, I started years ago in the financial side of the real estate world. I was a loan officer at a local credit union for a lot of years, and then decided during that time to kind of take a step back and maybe step down and be a processor, not realizing that is not a step down. And those processors work much harder than the loan officers do.
They just don't get the credit.
Yeah.
And, they don't get
the credit. Yep.
We'll talk about that.
But during my time at the bank, I had the opportunity to come and actually work for the title company. Interesting. My mom has worked at a title company for years, a different title company. And I had always thought about, I really want to be an escrow officer. I think that that would be great. The celebration, people are, it's not always a celebration.
No.
Sometimes people are selling houses because they have to, or different circumstances, but just really helping people with that day was important to me. But really didn't think I would ever get the opportunity to do it. And 6 years ago, it kind of fell into my lap, and it's something that I really love. I love people. I love, being here to support them through their biggest financial transaction and becoming homeowners or moving out of the area and starting another adventure. Just there's a lot that goes into my job, but what I love is the people.
What's cool is you get to see both sides of that transaction.
Yes.
I didn't even think about this earlier, but you get to see the seller side.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, sometimes it's not a good situation. So you do
Yeah.
see some not so fun deals, but you also get to see the buyer side. So you get to see what people that we're talking to today is like. You get to see that side, that fun end of the story. So also, if you didn't catch that when Amber was telling you, like, she's done a lot of different stages in the process of real estate. There's a lot that goes on. So the knowledge that you bring to the table, even at the end. Because we'll get into what you do behind the scene, but even at the end is tenfold because of the experiences that you've had in our industry. So good. And when you're a buyer, you should look towards that. You should actually, I wouldn't say chase it, but find out if they know that they have this knowledge, because it does help, right?
Yeah. You want people in the transaction that are knowledgeable.
Yep. And look, if you haven't ever done a real estate transaction, and especially in the states that use escrow or title companies, they know how to write upside down, or they know how to read upside down. So that's a skill that I give them all the time. I joke about it, but truthfully, I mean, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's weird, man.
I couldn't do it.
No.
It requires a lot of practice.
It does. But so tell me about your life. What's personal? How's personal life going?
Great. Born and raised here in Pocatello. Love the community that we live in. I think
Minus
it's wonderful.
these 14, 15 winters that we get.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't mind the winter.
I don't mind the winter
Actually,
either.
the winter is my favorite season.
Do you
so
like the snow though? Like,
I love the snow.
It's second winter I hate.
Yeah.
yeah. And then you kind of get used to it.
I don't like the cold with the yellow grass. So I want it to be covered in snow and ice, or I want green grass.
So I come from North Carolina, and I'll let you get back to your personal side. But like when we hear that it's going to snow in North Carolina, the town shuts down. Like it's only prediction. Like even if the weatherman comes up and says, "Hey, tomorrow we have a 10% chance of snow," schools are closed, town shut down. But in North Carolina's defense, we always got ice with our snow.
Okay.
So
that
it
makes me feel a little
did
bit
make it a
better.
little bit more
'Cause every time you
treacherous.
see the freeways,
Yeah.
and there'd just be like 4 cars on fire, somebody's running around with a
Right.
gun, like, what's happening?
What is going on?
It's just
Apocalypse.
like we got a half an inch of snow.
But no, here, luckily, and this is why I don't mind the snow. And I've only been here for 3 years, so it might change, but I don't mind the snow because it takes a couple hours and everything's back to normal.
Yeah.
But so yeah, sorry to interrupt, but go back to
That's
personal
okay.
life. So yeah, how's that? So we love winter. How's everything else?
Love winter. Great. Married, have 2 daughters. One of my oldest daughters getting ready to graduate at our local university here in a couple weeks. So super proud of her.
Good
She's
job.
graduating early, 20 years old, and getting her degree.
Josh,
so she's
did you do that? I don't think we did that.
You talking about the Van Wilder
Yeah,
comment I made
I
before
was-
we started?
Right. I was like a 7-year student. So
Yeah.
there
you
was
both,
no
man.
Van
You and me
Wilder
both.
with her. Yeah, she's pretty dedicated.
Awesome.
And then I have a 13-year-old daughter that plays sports, and it keeps us really busy.
Nice. Well, that's super good to hear, Amber. And that's honestly, that's what I love about this industry is that family does come first.
Yes.
And we are able to allow that to occur. So I love seeing your Facebook post. You put a lot out there just about how life is important to you and family is important to you. So good to hear. We'll come back to you on the
Okay.
fun side of this transaction. But Mr. Josh, how are you doing, buddy?
Miss Brooks, good man.
Good. I'm so pumped to have you on. I've kind of been coaching Josh. I'm like, come on, you got to be on my podcast.
me
You
in.
got to do it. You got to do it. So now I'm super glad that he joined us today because there's a lot that comes to the transaction on the real estate side or realtor side that you as a buyer don't see. So I think it's going to be good to hear. So Josh, how's life, buddy?
Good, man. Yeah.
What you doing?
These days, just raising my little almost 2-year-old girl.
I've got she'll be one next
Trying to
month,
keep
dude.
my wife happy. Man, that's crazy.
Trying to
dude.
keep your wife happy. You know,
Buy her a new house.
that works. No, but no, that's a fun job to have, is keeping a wife happy. And I think we're both successful at it, hopefully most days. But
We both
Uh,
dealing with nurses too, man.
both dealing with nurses too, so that's always a fun transaction per se. But no, so yeah, you got a little girl. We kind of chat about that often because we both have small girls. I have more than one child, but this is this little girl. Our youngest little girl is our only child, that Tosh, my current wife, that we have together. And man, it was a life changer. I love little kids, but a little girl will change your heart more than anything in this world, I feel like. So
Yeah, I was not ready.
I wasn't ready either. I thought I was, but the pinky is wrapped, dude.
Yeah, man.
The
Punched
pinky is wrapped
right in the heart, man.
Yeah. So so good. So what's your hobbies? What do you like to do outside of the fun world of real estate?
Oh man. Great outdoors, read,
Yeah, we have so much
fish,
here.
hike.
Amber,
yeah.
if you don't mind, can you shut that blind?
Absolutely.
Because I feel like it's getting me and Josh in the eyes. We had some
Gazer
sunlight come
beam,
in.
Yeah.
So we had some sunlight come in to help with the lighting, but yeah, right when it gets you a sunglass lens over your eyes.
It looks beautiful out there.
It's so pretty
It's
today, but
30
it's a little
degrees,
chilly.
yeah.
But it's pretty outside. But no, so yeah, so what's so hobbies? So you like to hike? You like to kayak? What you like?
Oh yeah, hiking, fly fishing.
Nice. I
Yeah.
want to learn that, man. I have not done that.
good,
Well,
man.
let me start over. I've tried it, but I've not been successful at fly fishing since I've moved here.
No, it's good, man. It's great. You just get to zone out.
Yeah, because you're
Fun.
kind of in its own little world. You're quiet. You're in nature. Just
Yeah, it's a little
enjoy it.
meditative,
A little
dude.
meditative.
Yeah.
So-
Every time I do meditate, so it's a good thing.
Keeps you busy or keeps you concentrated on that time. So, no. All right, guys. So I want to dive in. I'm super excited about this conversation because I do feel like a lot of people don't know it. They don't know that this side of the transaction occurs, right? So kind of want to go step by step in a little bit of way, but we'll do it ad lib in the sense of whatever comes up. But first, let's start with this. Josh, you are the realtor. You're the first person that a buyer usually meets. You're the first person that either impresses or has a buyer, move on to another situation. But yeah, you're that face. So once they meet you, you start the process of getting them with a lender, getting them pre-approved, and then we find a house that we like. What are you doing behind the scenes to find that house? And then what are you doing once we find a house that our buyer really, really likes and wants to put a contract in?
Well, man, there's a ton of things that go into finding a house. I mean, obviously, using the MLS, other sources that are available. The other
Now,
thing,
a realtor are the only people that can use the MLS, right? Like me as a buyer or someone that's buying a house, we can't go research that stuff, right?
no, not
Yeah.
through the MLS. And you can't see prior history very
Right.
much as well either. I mean, you might be able to find a little bit of information on, like, say, Realtor.com and Zillow.
Got you.
But one of the things I'll do, like, say we're looking at a property I've seen that's been on the market a few times. One good thing to do is go through and check the property disclosure from the previous sellers and previous times that it's been on the market.
What are you looking for?
Checking to see if it matches up.
No, that would never occur.
Yeah.
here, so.
Not to say that it doesn't, but sometimes you'll see some discrepancies, or for instance, you'll have one that's sold, got bought, flipped, and then that person's never lived in the house. So in their property disclosure, they don't
really know.
necessarily, address what was there in the previous.
Yeah.
So go through that part of the process. House looks.
Do you do this
Nice.
before you say, "Hey, let's go look at this house," or do you do that when the buyer says, "Hey, I really like this house"? Let's go look at it?"
It'll depend on the house. So if I've seen the house before, then I might pull that stuff. If I've been in there, shown it previously, then I might pull some previous stuff. If maybe I saw something there or knew something about the house, just to double check. But typically, like, if it's a house I haven't seen, then no, we'll go see the house first, and then I'll start the research after if it's something that they
Because
think they're
honestly,
gonna be
what's the point
invested
of doing
in.
the research if that
Yeah.
buyer's not going to really
Yeah.
like it? So
So does that search process start with the price point? You're looking at all the houses, knowing what they want, how many bedrooms, and then you just
Absolutely.
kind of go out with what's out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, like, occasionally, like it begins with relationships, especially in a smaller community like this. Like
Yeah.
a lot of times, um, you can talk to some other agents and like say, hey, I have this buyer. I'm not seeing anything, available online on the MLS that is, that I
That
think,
fits
or
what you
they
need.
think, we've gone through everything. They've seen everything. They've moved on. Like, does anyone have anything coming up? And oftentimes, another agent will have something that may not have hit the market yet that, maybe hopefully we can get in right when it hits,
Yeah.
be one of those first people in.
That's awesome.
is
Because
helpful.
that's helpful. I mean, honestly, as a buyer, it almost gives you a shoe in before that house hits the market. So like it's a good situation. So all right, so now we found the house that we want to buy, right? We've picked it out. You've told us that, hey, this is the price point that we think we should put an offer in at. And we all agree. What's the next step? What are you doing behind the scene once we've found that house?
I'm going to go through and start with comparables. So I'll go the previous 6 months. I'm going to look at homes, similar build, similar age, see what they sold for, see if they paid, if there were any seller concessions, meaning like, did they pay any of the buyer's closing costs? Did they do any additional repairs on
I
the
didn't know
property?
you could see that on previous transaction. That's sweet.
Yeah, you can.
Nice.
On everyone. Yeah, it's super helpful.
Yeah.
Because that's a big part of the transaction.
And in today's world, yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you can see the price point on a property, but then find out that they paid 3% of the buyer's closing costs, it's a huge chunk of change, and
Yeah.
it really affects, what the value of the home is in that context.
Agreed. All right, so you've researched that. You've researched what it sold for previously, how long that owner has had it. Does that dictate anything that you do contractually for your buyer?
As far as writing up an offer,
Yeah.
Not particularly. Like the price of the home and the property disclosure, the condition of the home is going to be what it's going to be.
Right.
As far as that goes, um, if it is like a renovation, like a flip,
Yeah.
I'm going to caution them to maybe add some more stipulations once we get to the inspection part of the process.
Okay.
But I'm going to coach them on that.
And
at
what's
the time
that?
of
What's
the
the
offer.
reasoning of that? Like, why are you doing that?
Just cover the buyer's bases.
Well, I asked this question because I kind of already know a little bit of that. But when we initially talked before, it was a lot of it has to do with because that flipper most likely hasn't lived in that house, right?
Yeah, they have no knowledge of the property. So
Right.
what I'm going to encourage there is, we get the initial inspection. I feel like you should always get an inspection with a qualified inspector, but maybe see if you can get some additional experts in, like HVAC. Just had a property built in the 1920s. Had a structural engineer come and check on the property just because of the age of the foundation.
Yeah, and it's smart. I mean, and luckily, nothing was wrong, right?
Nope, turned out great. But that especially with foundation issues, it's kind of hard to just put a patch on that.
Yeah, you can.
So you want to find an expert and hopefully either clear that or address that right out the gate, because it's not something that you want to put a buyer in.
All right, so we've gotten to the point that we've written the contract. How long is what's the normal turnaround time for a contract to be reviewed by the seller and their realtor, and then kind of where does it go from there?
We typically, it's nice to give a 24-hour response time, just because everyone's living their lives in the middle of the process. After that, depending on, like, either, hey, fantastic, you get the offer accepted straight away, or you'll do counters. Typically, once you have go through the counter process, it's usually still wrapped up that next following day.
Yeah.
So you'll give them 24 hours response time, or maybe a 12-hour response time,
depending on what stage you are.
Yeah.
Got you. Crazy story. When I bought my house here in Pocatello, I wrote my offer on Christmas Eve.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a crazy market at that time. It was right at the tail end of when things were crazy, so you didn't have a lot of time to make a decision.
Showed houses all day Christmas Eve
Isn't
on
it
in
crazy? And
2021.
I hate that.
All day on Christmas Eve.
And that's when I bought my
It
house.
was
Was
wild.
21. So I mean, yeah, it was crazy.
You
in
didn't
the
have a
sense-
choice.
You did not
Did
have a
you?
choice.
And I knew that those buyers didn't have a choice.
Yep.
So
And my realtor at the time, Camille, I love Camille. Josh, you work with her
Yeah,
at
Camille's
Gate
awesome.
City, but
Great.
yeah, she wrote my offer on Christmas Eve.
Yep.
You know, like I'm not saying that as a buyer you should look for realtors that are going to do that, because we have families and that should be their first priority. But there are realtors that will do a lot on after hours and whatever it may be, including Josh, that will do it when it needs to be done. So, anyways,
We don't really have hours as real estate agents.
Correct, and that's exactly where I was going to.
And unfortunately,
That's exactly where I was going. Is that you do all these behind the scene parts at different hours of the day. It's not in the 9 to 5 part of the day. Like it can be 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night when you're still trying to figure out how to get this done. So awesome. So now we are under contract. Yes, we got the house, or we got under contract, and the house could be ours potentially in the next 30 days or so. That's where my team comes in. And man, if I don't, I will tell you every time that there is a transaction that I have people that help me look good, because I can't do it on my own. Honestly, if I tried to do it on my own, I would not look as good as I feel like I look in the transaction process. But no, so we have a processor and a loan. Well, I call them an LOA. So if you'll learn this, and I think even in the real estate side, we have a lot of acronyms. But an LOA, loan officer assistant, that comes in and makes sure that file is prepared, ready to go to underwriting. But no, they do. If there's 10 stages to my process, they're doing at least 8 of them, right? Yeah. They're ordering the appraisal. They're making sure docs are following. They're the ones that are checking in, making sure that you are sending the correct docs. I am the communication point, but they're the ones that are like, hey, Brooks, this is where we are. We need this, this, and this. They do it.
You're the face of the loan.
I'm the face of the loan. And I love it because I nerd out on numbers. So I nerd out on saying, this is where we are interest rate wise. This is the market that we're in. This is the economy, sadly, that we're in currently. But like I love talking that. I hate document chasing. I despise it. I probably say too much, but I'm not organized enough to chase documents that way.
That's a fair statement.
Yeah.
And
So
honest.
I like
I'm
having
not detail oriented either.
see, and that's why I like what I do, because I get to be the talker. I love to talk to people, and I get to have that initial conversation. But yes, so my processor, Lauren, by far the best processor in the
She's
nation.
amazing.
She's so
She's
good.
amazing.
So when you do a transaction with me, Lauren does 90% of that work. Mirica is our loan officer assistant. She's licensed, so she's able to do pretty much everything on the backside that I can do, running rates, building files, and she does that. So, for example, and that's what I love about our industry, because we've said it, this will probably be the 4th time, is that family comes first. I could be at a soccer game with my kid and get a file in, or get someone say, hey, I want to go under contract. We found the house. Guess what? I could still stay at my soccer game. And I've talked to the buyer, and they know this. I'm like, hey, I want to send it to Mirica. Mirica's going to build the file. She'll have it ready for us, and we'll be ready to start the process. And that's what happens. You guys don't see that side of it, but Mirica does that initial set of building that file, because technically a lot of the building of the file requires a licensed loan officer. And luckily, again, I've got a great team where my LOA is able to do that.
Yeah.
So no, it's a great part. So we've done that. And then Miss Amber comes in. Well, Flying S Title comes in. But Mirica, Lauren, my processor, and even Josh, we all kind of shoot things at Amber and her team, and like, hey, this is where we are. We need it in 10 minutes, Amber. We need these numbers real quick, Amber. But again, you guys as buyers, you don't see that side of it. But Amber, so tell me the fun side of escrow and the fun side of title, of what it takes. What are you guys doing at that initial stage of that transaction to keep us afloat?
So interesting enough, the title and escrow process across the country is different
It's crazy.
in certain states.
So,
Yeah.
and sorry to interrupt, but North Carolina, I dealt with lawyers and
Yes.
attorneys.
Yep.
And while they are legal, they know legal terms, they know contractual terms. I love Idaho in the sense of, because we use title companies. You guys deal with what? Mortgages and mortgages only. Well, land, Real estate, sorry.
real estate
Real estate
transactions.
transactions,
So
yeah.
commercial transactions. You know, I often get asked, "Are you an attorney? Do you have to be an attorney to do the closing portion of it?" So, in Idaho, we don't. We have title insurance companies. So I work for a title insurance company that offers escrow services. So we have two different departments within the title company
Yeah.
where once a contract comes in from these guys, we're doing an initial search on the property. So we go back to the very beginning when the U.S. government took that property, and we go back and search the property.
Did they steal that property?
Well, that's
That's
a
another
different
story.
conversation. Yeah.
Louisiana Purchase, France stole
Yeah.
it. Then
True.
we bought it from France.
Let's not get Josh started on that.
They all did. Yeah.
Josh is a very analytical person, and
Very
he's
much so.
yes,
I
he
love
could
those
take us all the way through it.
conversations.
Yes.
But not only will he be analytical, you can have a 3-hour conversation about one topic.
Oh yes.
A little too much.
Yeah. But it's fun though. It's fun. Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, that's okay. So we go back and do the search on the property to verify that every time that property changed hands, it was legal, and we're going to provide the buyers and sellers with a title insurance policy, and that is guaranteeing that they have the legal use to their property. We see a lot of different things on the title side, and sometimes we have messy title searches. But that's part of the job that kind of makes us seem irrelevant sometimes to people, is we're dealing with those hard things in the background, and we're only involving people when they need to be involved, or, you know, going back. But sometimes I have the messiest file I've ever had going on right now. And there are so many different moving parts to where, you know, people gave their neighbors permission to use their property and they didn't legally convey it. And they built property on, you know, the property line, and then they got a mortgage, and there's all these different things that go on. And sometimes, you know, it takes a long time to get us to that point, but that's what we're doing for you, for a very reasonable fee in the transaction.
Oh yeah, and reasonable in the sense of you guys are very close with any competitor, and just I think that the transaction fee that you guys charge is standard in the sense of this is what the work really costs.
So in Idaho, because we're a title insurance company, we're actually regulated with the state. So any title company that you use has to disclose their fees.
Mm-hmm.
They have to register those with the state, and they should be very similar to each other, because we are regulated that way. And then the portion of my job that we do, we offer the escrow services.
She's the fun side.
Yeah, I'm the fun side. Title side's boring. Don't tell my son.
Well, I always say title is the office without windows,
Yeah.
and escrow is the office with
Yeah.
windows.
Yeah. Title's like the number correct.
Yeah,
The thing-
gosh,
The thing is, another thing that title does, before I even write a property, sometimes if there's like an issue that I see with easements, or with like property lines, like I'll get on the county parcel view, or I'll check it out first and see like, hey, what's going on with this zoning here. But the first thing I do then is I'll contact Flyness and talk to the title side, because this is what these guys do all day.
Yeah, and they're quick.
They get back to me immediately, and we get those questions answered. So even before we write a property, these
Sometimes
guys
that's
will work
involved,
and help and make sure, like, hey, no, it does look like there's an easement here, you know, so that we can make an informed decision on whether or not we want to put in an offer. Like, title companies do so much. They're like this massive knowledge base.
Yep.
As far as like the actual property itself. Agreed.
So now we've gone through, like you said, what you title and escrow kind of work simultaneously through the process, right?
We do. So kind of what happens with that is the title officers are extremely intelligent people. They go through and they look at the entire piece of property, and they find out if we're going to have issues. And then they prepare a title commitment that's provided to the lender and the real estate agent in the transaction. That title commitment gives me, as the escrow officer, instructions on what I need to do to clear title to get us to closing. Oftentimes, if it is a situation that is messy, it does require the help of the title officers. But for the most part, we actually they're giving us those assignments, and then we're working through it to get us to closing. Some of those things involve payoffs and taxes, judgments against sellers or
Oh.
buyers, different things that we.
Silent liens, like
Yeah.
people that don't see that initially.
Yeah.
I've had this conversation with a couple of realtors because I think it's becoming a growing. I don't know what you would call it because it's not really an upgrade, but like solar panels on a house.
Yes.
Do you consider those an upgrade?
No.
Not from a listing point of view. No. I love solar panels. I
do too.
think that it's
If it's in the right spot.
I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a great thing, but
Yeah.
like not everyone does.
No,
and
it's very
so
controversial.
like that's more of like a personal preference
Yeah.
there than it is anything else. I love solar panels.
Yeah.
Like, would I think that is a net benefit on a house? Absolutely. Can you lump the cost of a solar panel into a house? I don't know.
So there's different loan types that do allow that, and I need to do a podcast on solar panels and how they can be used on government loans, but that's for another day. But
I do think that's going to change in the future, but like where we're
Yeah.
at right now,
Yeah.
it's all about value to a buyer. And if a buyer doesn't value solar panels,
then what cost does it bring? Nothing.
Yeah.
But the reason I brought that up is because sometimes solar panels can be a silent lien.
Mm-hmm. Typically, we see those instead of a recorded lien,
Yeah.
like a mortgage or a deed of trust would be, a UCC filing, which is done with the Secretary of State.
How does that?
what's a UCC
Yeah.
filing?
So a UCC filing is not something that is typically recorded at the county level. Very common in commercial transactions. So if somebody was getting a commercial loan on a property, the lender would actually record a deed of trust or a mortgage against the property itself, the real property,
Right.
and a UCC may be filed for all the equipment inside. So it's not real property.
Because it can be removed.
Yeah.
I guess?
Yes.
Okay.
Very common in farm transactions.
Okay.
Lenders will file a UCC with the Secretary of State on the equipment, like
Okay.
the big rigs and the things that do the farm equipment. So,
See, I learned something.
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, no, me too.
but
That's interesting too because it's a fixed.
Yeah, 'cause most times-
panels are fixed structure,
Mhm.
but
yeah,
that's
so
cool.
so sometimes sometimes those UCCs are recorded, so we do know that they're there. But if a company was to do that and file a UCC, we may not see that because our job at the title department is to clear any recorded documents
Okay.
that have been recorded. So
Okay. Does a UCC affect the lien position at all?
yeah, it does
So-
if it's recorded.
Okay, well, what if it's not recorded? Is at that point, is it still allowing your mortgagee or whoever is funding that house to be?
To be in first lien position, yes, if
Okay,
it wasn't recorded.
And that's important, guys. So, as a buyer,
Interesting.
most mortgagees, like myself, Premier Mortgage Resources, we want to be first lien position when you're
Mhm.
making a purchase. Actually, I don't know that we would do it without that being the case. So having this knowledge and knowing that Amber and title companies are going to research that part to make sure that occurs is vital to this process. So good to hear, Amber. So all right, so now we are kind of I would say within the first week of
Mhm.
being under contract because title works fast, they're quick. They know that this is an important stage because guess what? We're still in our due diligence stage, right?
Absolutely.
We're still in the stage of when you as a buyer can back out due to things that you find at the house or whatever it may be. But that's when, like you said earlier, an inspection comes along, right?
Yeah, and I like to usually give, if we can get it, 10 business days
Okay.
for the inspection period.
Okay. Do we call it an inspection period here or due diligence? So back in North Carolina, it was called a due diligence time period. Do y'all call it an inspection period here?
I think it's a little
Either
both.
or,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I've seen it both ways.
yeah.
But yeah, so during that inspection period, what is occurring behind the scene for you as a realtor, and what is the stages that a buyer should expect to be occurring?
So we're going to want to get in and get through the initial inspection process. They're going to want to find a good inspector and a qualified inspector. Especially in Idaho, it's pretty easy to get a license as an inspector here.
Yeah.
In fact, you don't need to be licensed.
Yeah. So real quick though, because I feel like we oftentimes overlook the difference between an inspector and an appraiser because technically an appraisal is called an inspection as well. What is the difference between an inspector and the appraisal that is occurring?
So an appraiser is there to find value of the house and any potential issues based off of the type of loan, which you're
Yeah.
much more qualified to answer this part of the question than I am. But an appraiser's there and working in a sense for the lender,
Honestly, for the lender, yeah.
for the lender to find value for the loan. An inspector is there to find out if there are any material issues with the property that or is going to affect the purchase for the buyer.
Well, and a good inspector is not just looking at paint level. I mean, they're checking the electrical, they're checking plumbing, they're checking HVAC. Like
absolutely. Crawl spaces. My favorite inspector has found way too many dead cats. I know you probably don't want to hear that, but that's the type of inspector you want. You know what I mean? Go into the crawl spaces, into the nitty gritty to really see issues with the house. I mean, we had one. The inspector found a ton of mold and also asbestos insulation, which is,
it's common in our area, though.
Yeah, man. I've actually only had to deal with asbestos insulation once.
Good.
And it was bad, and had to get it remediated, and that is nasty. There's a difference between asbestos floor panels,
yes,
and asbestos insulation.
Yeah, because it's not. You can correct me, but I think the asbestos floor panels is in the glue, so it's not really. It does get airborne when you start breaking it up, but
if you don't touch it, it's fine. Asbestos insulation is fine. It's in there. It's already in the air. Yeah.
Yeah. So good. So yeah, the inspector part comes into play. Josh, what are you doing if the inspector comes back and says, "Hey, these are the 10 things that we found that could be moderate to major issues"?
I'll talk to the buyer about which of those they feel are issues that they really need to address, that they feel the most passionate about addressing. We'll write those down on the form's called RE10. It's an inspection contingency. Basically, the form is asking either there's 3 separate sections. There's either items to be addressed. If everything's fine, you can ignore the inspection completely. So that's the first one. Second one is items to be addressed, and the third one is termination. So if you decided you didn't want to touch it at all, you check mark that box and you're done. But say let's find we want to move forward. We have some things we want to get taken care of with the property. Maybe we want to get the HVAC tested. It looks like it hadn't been serviced. Yeah. In a while, you get that serviced. There's a few leaky pipes. We'd ask for that. Or a lot of times, if they don't want to deal with it, maybe they're asking for a little bit off the price or a credit for the buyer to do that themselves.
Yeah. An asterisk beside the credit. If you're doing a government loan, well, pretty much any loan with a lender, that credit is going to be given. You have to dictate or already identify who the repair person is going to be. A lot of times that we want it to be a contractor, but the check cannot be made out to Jane Doe for you to use at your own expense when that time comes. So it's important for you, I guess, as a realtor, when you're having that conversation, are you saying, "Hey, look, these are my top people that do HVAC. These are my top people that do such and such"?
Yeah, I mean, you want to get a local guy. You want to get someone that is competent and is going to get the job taken care of. Because another tough part of that is if you put that in the hands of the seller, and a lot of times you do. But,
you do, yeah. But I'm with you. I'd rather be in the hands of the buyer, because then the buyer can. The seller's going to get the cheapest one because they're moving on.
They're going to try, and maybe not, but
yeah.
But
they're not as invested.
They have a financial incentive to save money there, because that's not their. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Another thing, I'm glad you brought up the loan, because it all made me think about the type of loan, which has a huge impact on the inspection as well. If you have a good inspector, because a good inspector, my favorite inspector that I like to use, the first thing he does when you start the walkthrough with the buyers is he goes, "What type of loan is this?
Yep.
Is this conventional? Is this FHA? Is this VA?" And you let him know, and he says, "Okay, well, regardless, I'm going to point out, we're going to walk through this inspection as if it was an FHA or VA loan. I'm going to point out
I like that.
Everything that would potentially be called out by an appraiser in this issue, so that if we need to, we can address those."
Yeah, because what Josh is alluding to is different loan types do have different requirements of what is deemed acceptable during the appraisal and what is not deemed acceptable during the appraisal. So yeah, if you can have an inspector now, asterisk again here, an inspector is optional, right? Like you don't have to do an inspector or an inspection as a buyer. That's not, but it's
No, you don't.
highly recommended.
Yeah, I saw a couple.
Yeah. Well, back
during 2020 and 2021, during the wild gunslinging days, I had about 4 emails and 2 text messages and a voicemail saying, "Hey, I really think we should get an inspection. I understand if that's what if you want to forego that in order to make your offer seem more appealing, but man, I really think that we should get this done."
Yeah.
And that was scary.
Yeah, and also to disclose, we as lenders don't require an inspection, but nor do we want to see the inspection report.
Say, we don't want to show it to you.
We don't want to see the inspection report either, because what's seen is not unseen or can't be unseen. So keep that between you and the realtor. But yeah, I mean, it's good for you guys because you're still in that inspection period. You're still in your period where you can back out and get any kind of money that you've already put into it. Mm-hmm. You're still in that period that gives you, honestly, the ball is in your court at that point as a buyer to trust your inspector and trust your realtor and say, okay, we are here and this is a good move, or hey, we're here. We might want to reconsider some things.
Yeah, I mean, and
you said 10 days, right? Usually.
Yeah, for me. So I mean, that actually varies a ton.
Yeah.
Among different agents. That one is. I don't know if 10 days is this. Actually, Amber would be able to. What do you see? What do you see more on there? Yeah,
I either see 10 days or 7 business days.
I was going to say 7 business days.
I've seen that too.
Depending on our market, I feel like knowing how busy the inspectors are, what things are looking like, sometimes that time is adjusted. But I would say 7 business days or 10 days is standard.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So yeah, so we've gotten to that point now. We're in inspection. Again, a lot of it's going back in the background for the lending side. My lender at that point, once my processor, once the inspection is done, once we get outside of the inspection period, we're probably going to order the appraisal. Nowadays we can. Used to, when it was 2020, you had to order the day you got on the contract because it was going to be 21 days before the appraisal could occur. But now, thankfully, we can wait until your inspection period is over, because if you want to back out, we don't want to have an appraisal lined up. But we'll order that appraiser. Again, Lauren, my processor, is the one that's doing that ordering. She's going to line up with, we use a third party. A lot of people don't understand this side, but lenders, by regulations, we're not allowed to talk to an appraisal or appraiser. We're not even allowed to talk to the company as it pertains to the value that they're going to give to that house. So we have a third party platform that we use to order the appraisal. And then they line it up. They get an appraiser there. Another thing to point out is a lender is not allowed to charge extra for an appraisal. So if an appraiser comes in and says his cost is 1, 2, 3, that's what we have to charge you. We cannot. There's no additional fees that we can put on to an appraisal cost, because it is something that you, as a buyer, cannot shop. So we can't increase those fees. But so anyway, so that appraisal is occurring in the background.
Which sounds like a good thing.
It's a great thing. And again, this comes from the 2008, 2009 era when lending was, when lending was not being done. And well, I guess it's 2007, 2008, was not being done the right way for buyers. Honestly. I mean, I'm happy that these regulations are here, and sadly, NAR is kind of going through the same scenario for realtors.
Wild that they're deregulating is what it seems like.
Well, true. Yeah. Well, it's because they didn't step in when they should have stepped in earlier. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. But I do feel like there's going to be different things, and that can be a whole nother podcast as well. But I do feel like that NAR lawsuit and debacle, thankfully, Idaho's, I think, handled. We were in good shape prior to this occurring. So this is a state to state situation. But in NAR, which if you don't know what that stands for, it's National Association of Realtors. Most realtors are a member of it, and they try to dictate a lot of code of ethics, if I'm leading that right.
Yeah, amongst their members. Yeah,
amongst the members. But that lawsuit kind of showed or showcased that a lot of those code of ethics were not being
adhered to. One of the things that I actually think is a really good outcome there is that agents are now going to be required to represent buyers.
Yeah, but can you? I don't. At least given the option to be required to, like, they can still deny it, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
They can, but you as an
You, the
agent,
agent, have
need
to
to offer
And that, but
the
Idaho's
ability
already
to
been doing
represent.
that. Well, Idaho
I've been
has
doing
had the
that
forms to do that.
for 7 years. I've been doing that the whole time.
Yeah.
A ton of agents
A good
have
realtor.
not been doing that.
Yeah, a good realtor has been doing that, but with
And some
Idaho,
of the larger firms don't.
Yeah, and then that's kind of where this lawsuit occurred. But without disclosing any, because I don't want that to be in there. But yeah, so that's where this lawsuit occurred. But Idaho specifically, based off of the research that I've done, has already already had the tools available to you as a realtor to cover your butt.
Well, and you want to make sure that you're providing the best service and the same fiduciary duties to a buyer as you would to a seller.
Yeah.
That has always seemed crazy to me.
I agree. I don't get it. And
that you're not offering the same fiduciary duty, the same standard that you would for one as you would for the other.
I think
because both parts of the process are just as important. And in fact, like buying your home, it's, you've already gone through the process of buying a home, usually if you're selling one.
Right.
Not all the time.
Yeah.
But, especially first-time home buyers, like,
that's where
you
it is.
need guidance.
Yeah.
And to have an agent that, like, you don't have a representation agreement and you weren't even offered the ability to have a representation agreement with said agent, it was a little scary.
Yeah.
Like, you want to know that you have someone in your corner fighting for you.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, so that can be, we might have to have another conversation about our conspiracy theory of the NAR, but no, it is a very important part of our industry. And I think it will in turn change some aspects, maybe not quite here at home in Idaho, but across the nation, it will change how realtors in their area do business. So, all right, good. So now we've got a we've gone through the inspection period. We've either agreed to the repairs with the seller, or, hey, this house is perfect, we moved on. And we've ordered the appraisal. So my processors ordered the appraisal. At this point, probably you've had a couple conversations with Lauren, my processor, and getting docs in order. Because at this point, we're ready probably to start stage one of underwriting, meaning, let me start back. I'll put an asterisk to this as well. I love asterisks. Do you like asterisks? But with the company I work for, PMR, Premier Mortgage Resources, we're allowed to do full buyer underwriting prior to finding a home, which we call TBD underwriting. But this allows the buyer to go through underwriting process as a buyer side, validating all of their income and so on and so forth, so that once they do find a home, that their process is a little bit easier. Things do come up. Josh can attest to that. So we still have to tackle some things even after that stage.
Well, that was
COVID. Yep. So, but yeah, so we do that along the way, but it does make the process a little bit easier most of the time. So once we get to that point, we can resubmit property and new or documents that we needed to obtain to the underwriter. Again, this is another person that is behind the scene, right? An underwriter. And you've had some experience in underwriting, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, they do a lot. They're the yes and no man. Or woman. They're the ones that kind of say, this is acceptable, this is not. I love to tell you that everything's acceptable. And I kind of know as a lender what we would normally deem as an acceptable document or as a not approvable document. But they get the final say, right?
They do get the final say.
Yep. So they're reviewing it at that point. And another thing I like about PMR, the company I work for, is I'll submit a file to underwriting 4 or 5 times throughout the process, because I never want it to be, let's gather everything, let's wait 3 weeks and gather everything and then submit it, and then we get back. And PMR is actually an advocate for constant submissions, because they want that. They don't want it to be, week 3 of a week 4 transaction, and we're just now tackling through what we're missing. So they want us to go through and
work
submit
on it as you get it.
Yep, build pieces. So
that's important for buyers.
It's important.
You want to have a solid pre-approval. If you've got a loan officer that's just telling you based off of what you're saying to them that you're pre-approved to go buy a $400,000 house, that is not something that you want to just go with.
And it occurs, sadly, still in today's market. It still occurs. Yes, there's a difference between pre-qualification and approvals. I'm going to have to start making a list, guys. You guys are giving me several topics and I need to put on my list of, hey, this is the next episode. But anyway, so yeah, there's a difference. And yes, the face, me or whoever you're talking to as a lender is going to give you that initial, yes, this looks like we can do it. But if they're not doing their homework and they're not doing it the right way, it goes from being pre-approved to being pre-qualified. And pre-qualified is just, it's as valid as you getting a letter in the mail that says you can get this credit card with $10,000 on it. They're just looking at metrics here. They haven't even ran your credit. There's no way that this is a valid full pre-approval. So it's very important. So you brought up a good point, Amber, like have that occur early on in the situation. So
especially if you have a situation that you've got different kind of income,
yeah, variable income or income. Josh and I were working on a deal, and yeah, this poor fella, he was working in a specific state when COVID restrictions were super, super high, and it caused some hiccups in proving income.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's an important part of the transaction that you have to go through, and it does cause stress on all parties. And I'm not being boastful here, but I will say this, that if you don't have a lender or a realtor, because this is a fun story. I'm trying to keep it as vague as possible, but like me and Josh are working on this transaction. We fought tooth and nail to, like we made different calls. We called and got in touch with people probably shouldn't even been able to talk to just to make sure that we could prove it.
Well, and it was an issue that wouldn't have even been an issue in this state.
Right.
Not the problem.
Yeah, right.
Is part of the problem.
And that's why it made it so complex in the sense of when do we say yes and when do we say no?
Yeah.
So, again, I don't want to dive in too much of that one because that's personal information. But yeah, that's important to have someone that does that, and even title that does that on the backside, because there are certain things that sadly other title companies will say, "Oh, we'll let this one slide." But you don't want that. If you are going to be the person that's going to be on that deed or be that person that's taken over this property, you want to make sure that it's truly yours.
Right.
All right. So we've got the appraisal in. Do you guys, as title company, what do you do at that point? So we've got the appraisal back.
So during that point, typically once the lender has the appraisal back, we know we're getting really close to the closing.
Yeah.
So we're working hopefully to have title clear by that point. We've ordered all the payoffs, done all of those things to guarantee that the new buyer is getting a clear property. And then we're working with the team at the lending office typically.
Because you guys work with my processor a lot.
Back and forth with figures and different numbers, different disclosures.
Yeah.
Just working to make sure that everything is together and legal for closing date and matches.
Yeah. So that's important to note as well. So us as lenders, we send out a CD or closing disclosure, but we send it to title first because we want to balance to the penny, right? Like we want everything to match up, every charge, trying to say this with being as vague as possible, but like there's a lot of charges that go into a closing, and we want to make sure all of those match up. Yes. And what you guys are recording is truly what's occurring. So
right, and like Brooks mentioned before, dealing with a lender and a reputable lender, they're going to give you these estimates ahead of time. They're going to give you those loan estimates in the very beginning. So unless a bunch of things have changed or you're paying something off in closing, a lot of those fees, his appraisal fee, our title fees, our recording charges, those are all very similar. And
well, we're regulated. We're regulated to make them as close. I mean, it's called a loan estimate. It is an estimate at the initial stage, but they have to be very, very close. Otherwise, we have to send out another disclosure saying, hey, this is what's changed. This is the new fee. And sometimes it could be a reduction, but this is the new fee that's attached to it. So, it's important to have a lender that's going to give you as close to possible number-wise that will be legit. Now, I will be the first to tell you, I like my numbers high on the initial stage. And I let my buyers know, look, this number is usually higher than what it's going to be, but I'd rather you be prepared for what could come. Because again, like for example, an appraiser, I don't know who the appraiser is going to be when we get to that point. Appraisers charge differently. Sadly, I don't get to pick the appraiser and you don't get to pick the appraiser. So that fee that comes, yes, I can deny if it's outlandish. I have to have a reason as to why I would deny a specific appraiser that accepted the job. But if it's an outlandish price, yes, I can deny it. But yeah, that price could be sometimes variance of $100. So we always typically put it as a higher end so that you as a buyer are prepared to, this is the this is the amount that we could be charged.
Yeah.
But it could be less. So yeah. But yeah, title is pretty easy on the fee side, so that doesn't change a lot, right?
Nope, not unless loan figures move around, down payments
Yeah,
change.
yeah.
That doesn't typically change. But I'll just kind of put in my plug for using a local lender. That's why it's really important for consumers and buyers to use a local lender, because
Local lender and realtor, because I
Yeah.
feel like that gets left out too a lot. But realtors,
we already
know
know
that-
they're crucial.
they're
It's-
crucial, but they know their area.
Mhm.
There's a lot of national chains that will circumference like the whole state of Idaho, which I mean, some of them do a good job. I'm not dogging all of them, but some of them are doing it just for, gosh, it sounds so bad. I don't mean it this way, but like just a paycheck. They're doing it just because it's a job. When you have local realtors, and I'll say Josh because he's this way, but like they value the community that they're in, and they're going to give you the utmost and professional opinion of what's going on. So
Yeah, same with local lenders.
yeah, you're right.
Like if a buyer comes in with an out-of-state lender and they don't have a relationship with them, like I don't have a relationship with them.
Right.
I can't like an out-of-state lender if they're not, pulling their weight in the process of this transaction.
Yeah.
It's a lot tougher for me to raise a little hell.
Yeah. And a lot
when
of times
there
you're doing
isn't
it
a ton of
blindly at that
content.
point.
Yeah.
Like, and that's not fun.
Yeah, because I don't know their supervisor. Like it's a lot tougher to escalate things if a lender isn't necessarily doing their job.
Exactly.
God, man, that's part of why Amber's background is so amazing.
Oh, 100%.
When I'm on the sell side of a transaction, like even if Amber's not the escrow officer on it, even a
I'm with
title
you.
company, I'll call Amber if I have questions about, issues with the loan or issues with underwriting, because she knows it. She knows so much of the process facilitating it forward, which like is unique to her specifically.
Oh, most
Because
definitely.
you don't have a lot of escrow officers that have Amber's background and that know the ins and outs of the process through that loan all the way through to escrow.
But again, you brought up a good point. You have advocates for you, Josh. You have advocates that the buyer might not even know that you're making these calls because you're doing it in the best interest of them. I mean, yes, Amber knows a ton, and I love Amber and I love working with her because she does know that. But any circumstance that you come across, you have an advocate that you can call, specifically in our area, because you know these people, and as a realtor, that behind the scene part is vital to making sure that your buyer, the person buying this house, you as the buyer, are getting the best care, professional care provided to you in the area that you're either moving to or already living in. So
absolutely, man. Like there's an issue, like there's a difference between an issue and a potential issue.
yes.
And if there's an issue, I'm always going to let my clients know about the issue. There's a potential issue, I'm going to find out if it's an issue before I let them know, because they have their own lives that they're going through.
Yeah.
They have, the process
But
of
you and
moving is stressful.
But you and I, or anybody in the background, we disclose it together. Like,
Oh,
for
yeah.
example, I mean, Josh and I were working on a file, and it's like, hey, this is a potential issue here. It's not a for sure thing, but hey, I'm working on it.
But I mean, it was, it's an issue. It's an issue at that stage because it needed.
Yeah.
It needs to be resolved,
Right.
right? Like it's something that we could work through, right?
Yeah,
I'm just talking about.
I know what you're saying. You don't want to stress, over stress the buyer.
Yeah, if it's not something that needs to be resolved or addressed,
in front of them.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up the point. Sometimes I feel like, real estate agents and title companies and even lenders, because we make it so easy, we kind of seem irrelevant in the transaction.
Mhm.
A lot of times you hear, well, what do I even need title insurance for? Why can't I just do it for sell by owner? Well, because buying and selling and refinancing is such an emotional thing for people, we do our best to protect people against issues without alarming them.
Yeah, 'cause there's a lot of stress.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there's so much stress.
That's a good point.
Sometimes we just, we're dealing with these things and it's going to be clear. And we know at the end of the day, you're going to closing and you're getting that free and clear property. And to you, this transaction was 100% smooth. But in the background, you've got people fighting for you and working through that and not alarming you of these issues. So really just making it seem so easy that maybe you didn't need us.
Unless you need to be,
That's a good point. And that's honestly something as a first-time homebuyer you should consider. um, when you get to that second, third home that you buy. Was your transaction smooth? Did you really feel like that you didn't need a realtor to do the job, or you didn't need a specific lender to do the job? If it was that smooth, that it felt that easy, it's because you had a good realtor. It's because you had a good lender, and it's because you have a great title company. So yeah, it's important. And we, the three of us, are just lenders, realtors, and title company. We need to express that at the end.
Mhm.
And I do try to humbly express that, especially about the people in the background. It's like, hey, this transaction was as smooth as it was because of Amber's team, or this transaction was as smooth as it was because Josh did this in the background.
I wish that buyers and sellers knew, and like I'm glad that this is the topic today,
Yeah.
because I wish that buyers and sellers knew what a good title and escrow company does for you.
Well, and a good agent and a lender.
Yeah,
That's
but
why
we're
I
visual.
Yeah.
I will back Josh up on this tenfold. Like, yes, a good realtor, a good agent they do a lot behind the scene, but they also do a lot and visually in front of you. So you see that and you're appreciative of that. Title companies, you guys do so
Yep.
much behind the scene, and they're humble about it. You get to the closing table and they say, Josh is great. You did a good job working with Josh. Or Brooks is great. You did a good job picking Brooks as your lender. No, you did a good job allowing us to help you, but also guiding you to this title company that did a ton.
Well,
of work.
and when agents and lenders that don't like to take accountability,
Oh yeah,
and something goes wrong,
guess who
who
takes
do they
that?
blame?
The title company, because you're the quickest and easiest to
Does-
say. Oh, they don't see them. They're out of
Doesn't
the way.
matter.
what do they
doesn't
say? It
matter what it
rolls
is.
downhill.
It rolls
That's
downhill.
all right.
You guys are always looking up, but I tell you,
From all levels, man. You have the buyer, the
Yep.
seller, the listing agent, the buyer's agent, and the lender. And like, if you have one, that is not, willing to take
Accountable.
responsibility, for their actions, that's 5 different potential avenues of blaming a title company for something that they have nothing to do with.
But we're so blessed in this area when we work with local lenders and local realtors. They appreciate us. They know what we're going through. That it and we have those relationships. Josh can't get mad at me because he has to come and sit across from me at the closing table.
Well, no, and not only at the closing table, but
Don't have to get mad at
we'll
Amber
go
'cause she
talk about
doesn't
it.
screw
She
up.
does. Yeah.
I'm
And
going to see him at Walmart
So-
tomorrow. So
you know what? It's funny, and Amber, give me a perspective. So you have been you've talked to escrow agents because you were a loan officer.
Mhm.
What does it feel like seeing? Because I'm not an escrow officer, nor have I ever experienced that. What does it feel like coming from someone that has been the dictator? That sounds hateful. Someone that's been saying, "Hey, I'm the starting point of this transaction," looking down to a title company, and then now being on the title company side and saying, "Okay, I'm here to help you."
I feel like
That's a great
my
question.
experience gives me an interesting perspective because I know the stress that the loan officer is going through. I know everything that his team is going through. So at the end of the day, when I'm, yes, it comes down to me and I've got to make it all work and put it all together and we've got to do it and make it look like we didn't just have all this stress. I can sympathize with the stress that they're going through.
Gotcha.
And for me, I loved lending. I loved, what you talk about being creative with the numbers and looking at all those things. But I love being the person that gets to celebrate the end
Oh,
process.
yeah.
I don't want to be the one that's telling them that, you know what, you got sick and you took a week off work. Now you can't buy this house. So
Gosh, that's so hard.
I think because I have that perspective of knowing what you guys go through as an escrow officer, it makes me a little bit more sympathetic to,
I like that.
maybe documents not getting here in time to review them and things like that. Last minute things happen. We have so many moving parts in all these transactions. It could be a perfect transaction and we still have so many different things that are happening. It may be a little last
In the
minute.
12th hour. Yeah, you're right.
And my job is, to make these guys look good.
You do. And I say that specifically to Amber, but we do have some good title companies
We do.
here.
We have a great community of
And yeah, and all of you, most of you do a great job at making me and Josh look good. So Amber's a great one, and she's probably the best one in our area. But no, seriously, it is great to have that option. So just to close out, is there one tidbit of information? Josh, we'll start with you to give Amber some time to prepare. But is there one tidbit of information that occurs in the background in the real estate transaction that you think a buyer should know about?
Title more than escrow even.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
In as far as like, because you'll buyers and sellers still talk to Amber occasionally before
Yeah, true.
you get to that part of the process. Man, I have had title find easements on properties that we were not aware of. I've had them find liens on properties that, you know, halted the trend, that we would never, things that you would never know about
Right.
on a transaction that affect.
And things that can, you know, the buyer or the seller assume it's already been taken care of.
Mhm.
You pay off a mortgage loan.
That's true, because
And-
sometimes sellers are shocked by what happened.
Absolutely.
No, I paid that mortgage loan off 15 years ago. Well, guess what? That company's had a business and they never released
Mhm.
the deed against your property. You might not owe them a dime, but there was a legal document recorded against your property and it's still out there. Or, you know, the neighbors before you allowed you know, to build your shed or the
Yep.
driveway on your property,
You
different
thought it was
things.
yours.
Yeah. Sometimes we see deeds that don't have proper notaries. So, you know, somebody passed away
Split the
and
handshake.
they gave the property to their children and now they're selling it and the notary didn't notarize
That's
it. There's
how
no
my-
stamp. It's not a legal document. And so for your protection, you know, title insurance finds all of those things and
And
then we
secures
help
it.
clear them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that happened. Well, I wouldn't say it happened to me specifically, but luckily the land I bought, my first house I bought in North Carolina, it encompassed a little bit of what was being used as farmland, but it technically was my land because plot wise it belonged to me. Thankfully, like I said, the family that owned the house before me, they let the farmer that was behind them, that had the field behind them, use that land
Mhm.
just as a handshake, because it's not a lot of land and it's not going to cause me any issues. But anyways, they let him use it. Thankfully, it didn't cause any uproars when I went to that farmer's like, hey, by the way, this technically is my plot. I'm going to reseed it. I'm going to make it grass. I'm going to use this land for my own
Mhm.
personal needs. But he could have been very confrontive or combative in the sense of saying, no, this land was promised to me. This is where I'm supposed to be able to use this land. And then there would have been some kind of issue. So yeah,
Yep.
these handshake transactions, mine is not a big issue, but I'm saying there are sometimes, like you said, like maybe a shed was put on too close to the line and that technically could be a problem.
Right. Another common problem that we have is like civil action
yeah.
when people are getting divorced.
Oh yeah.
Just because you go to an attorney and you get a divorce and that divorce decree says that that property is yours, there still is a conveyance that needs to happen on that and a quit claim deed or a warranty deed that needs to take place. And I would say 8 times out of 10, that does not happen. And so, you know,
yeah, it has to happen at that
It has-
transaction. And
yes.
sometimes that's years after the divorce. And you're like, I don't
Years.
want to deal with that. But
Mhm.
guess what? We live in a community state or community property state. Community property state,
Yeah.
which means that we have to have that conveyed. We have
Mhm.
to have that documentation. And again, title does that. Title is the one that finds that. And they say, hey, we need this documentation signed. So awesome. Guys, I cannot thank you both enough for coming on, giving some great information to our buyers. But also giving great information to lenders, other title companies, and other realtors.
Learning some great information
Learn
too,
some
man.
great information. Yeah,
It's
Miss
great.
Amber over
Yeah,
here.
I learned some things today. It's been
But,
awesome.
but no, so appreciate it, Josh. If you have someone, or if someone is in our area or moving to our area, what's the quickest and fastest way to get in touch with you?
Look me up online, Josh Winslow at Gate City Real Estate. Phone number as well. I mean, hit me. You know,
I'll put it in
Google.
the comments so you can.
Yeah,
have it
yeah.
right there. Okay. Awesome. So, and then Amber, Flyness, how can they get in touch with Flyness?
Just bring us a contract. and
Bring
we'll
us a
see ya.
contract. Yeah. And
But-
you guys do. Josh doesn't like this, and I honestly I don't either. But you will help a for sale by owner transaction too, right?
Yes, we always definitely recommend the use of a real estate agent. I recently had a for sale by owner transaction came and then they decided they didn't want to close without title insurance. So we can't help them if that's the case. And I advised them of what the potential issues were that they could get into. And it turns out there was a lien against the property. And anyways, they
Wow.
ended up going back and hiring a real estate agent
Oh,
and
good.
and went through the process. But we do not practice law, but we do have the blank forms for people to fill out.
Okay.
You know, if you're easy transaction, you're buying your sister's house,
Yeah.
we can assist you with that. But we 100% recommend the use of an agent all the time.
We're only necessary if we're necessary, but
Yep.
a
Yeah.
lot of times it's
They're
a good
necessary.
idea.
Yeah.
They are
It's a good
necessary.
idea.
They're necessary. And again, it just kind of go back to if it looked like it was so super, super smooth and you feel like you can do it on your own, it's because you had a good realtor.
Yep.
It's because you had a good transaction. Okay. But no, so they can go to, what's the website for Flyness?
Just go to the internet and Google fst.com.
Yeah. So fste.com will get you to Flyness Title. There's several branches around our area, Pocatello being the best, but just because
But we do service
Bias.
Montana and Wyoming as well. So
Yeah. So no, but yeah, so look them up, find a good escrow officer. Realtors and lenders kind of can give you some advice on that. You do get to pick. It is your right to dictate where you close your loans at, but trust your realtor, trust your lenders as giving you at least professional advice on that. So
It's like inspectors, you know,
Yeah.
if you ask us if we have any title companies that, you know, we prefer
right.
like to work with,
Same.
we'll let you know.
Yep. No, hey, thank you for tuning in, guys. I hope this was informative. We heard from the best. We got Amber and Josh here again that kind of gave us that tidbit of information of what happens behind the scene on a real estate transaction. So as a closing, remember, if the transaction was smooth and looked good, it's because you had good professionals doing the job. So I look forward to talking to you next week. Don't forget to subscribe and like. And again, this was the Mortgage Brew Podcast.